It's funny how a phone clutched tight in some cousin's hands can summon a village to laughter. I wouldn't understand that kind of humor for a long while, how it comes disguised in grainy videos and jittery hashtags, how it eats through your confidence like acid on metal. 10 years ago, my own voice, too high and too eager, echoed in a living room while my family hunched around a trembling screen. The city outside, our slice of Queens, cracked pavement and steam curling off gutters, kept swirling on, indifferent to my humiliation. That night someone had filmed me in the basement, practicing flambe with a battered cheap frying pan. I'd been alone, lost in the shimmer of blue flames. I'd forgotten about the house above. My sister's soft laughter, my aunt's tinny Turkish soap opera, the scrape of old slippers on tile. I'd been pretending not just to flambe pears but to host a food show. I'd said things like, feel the sizzle, the sugar turning gold, this is passion, this is art, in a too serious tone that made my family howl. After dinner, they called me upstairs. I let myself be led, hands sticky with syrup and pride, up into the glaring light. They pressed the phone into my hands. The video already had a couple thousand views. Someone had tagged it with #chef delusion. Laughter. My uncle pausing his meatball midair, next stop Food Network. Even my mother, who usually clapped after my scrambled eggs, put her hand over her mouth to hide a smile. It wasn't mean at first. They thought they were rooting for me in their way, but the room was so loud, so thick with ridicule, I almost dropped the phone. I'd stayed up that night, hunched at the kitchen table, scrolling through the comments. Who does this clown think he is? That pan's probably from Rite Aid. I slammed the phone on the Formica surface and stared at the ceiling, fighting the urge to cry. When you get laughed at by your family, the sting lingers, slow and deep. Their voices burrow under your skin, harder to shake than some stranger's comment. I tried to put the video behind me, pretended it didn't matter. The next time my cousins talked food, I kept my mouth shut. I picked up shifts at a local deli and took extra classes just to avoid sliding home before midnight. But the dream, whatever was left of it, wouldn't quite die. Late at night, long after everyone had gone to sleep, I'd sneak into the kitchen and practice slicing onions with surgical precision. I'd poach egg after egg until my eyes watered from the steam. Sometimes, when I was feeling bold, I'd try to cook something outlandish, something not even my mother had ever attempted. It was as if I was trying to prove to the blank stare of the kitchen wall that I could become the thing I clung to in my heart, a chef, a real one. Of course, outside the house it was worse. My friends embraced my dream with the sharp-edged affection bred by years of shared streets and cramped classrooms. You're gonna open a Michelin-star bodega? Hey, Gordon Ramsay called, he said he's scared. Laughter always a little too loud, a little too sharp. I learned to smile and pivot, feint and retreat. The world expects you, once shamed, to take the hint, to drop your foolishness and become something quieter, something that doesn't make people uncomfortable with its hope. I didn't entirely blame them. I knew the rhythm of our neighborhood. Most people hustled between 2 or 3 jobs, bought groceries with coins scraped from a drawer, measured out fun in infrequent birthday parties, and the rare trip into Manhattan for something sparkly. Chasing a fantasy wasn't just unusual, it was arrogant. Who was I to think I could slip past the city's teeth? I kept at it. The deli owner Sal watched me arrange sandwich fixings with unnecessary care and shook his head, but sometimes he'd mutter, "You got steady hands at least." When I could, I socked away cash for culinary school applications. There was no money, my grades were good but not dazzling. The rejection, when it showed up in the mailbox, was almost soothing in its predictability. Too expensive, they said. Come back when you have some experience, they said. Maybe next year. I did not give up, but it was less determination than inertia. I bounced from kitchens to hole-in-the-wall pizza joints to fading coffee shops. I learned how to chop onions so quick it made other cooks stare. I had burns and cuts that never fully fade, and fingers that forgot how to be soft. I learned to swallow pride the way I drained bitter coffee at 4 a.m. It wasn't pretty. I was living in a 6th-floor walk-up with 2 roommates who smoked too much and paid rent late. My mother called on Sundays, worried, her words wrapped in a low-level disappointment. She always ended the call the same way, with a hopeful, "Maybe you'll come home for your birthday." I always said I was busy. She always sighed. New York, for all its glory, is a machine built to chew up hopefuls. There were nights I'd wander midtown after my shift, peering into restaurant windows, white tablecloths, cool music, couples whispering over oysters. Outside, I shivered in my cheap chef's coat, marinating in envy and exhaustion. The breakthrough came by accident, as breakthroughs tend to do. The bakery where I worked, the 3rd job I'd picked up that year, got hit with food poisoning. Not my fault, but it shut down for weeks. I had nothing but a small severance check and a lot of time to kill. So I started filming myself again, this time in the flickering yellow light of my dingy apartment, using my phone duct taped to the spice rack and squinting into the lens. I recorded myself making dishes I'd never seen on YouTube: handmade manti, Turkish lamb dumplings, delicate and steaming, lemon basil sorbet churned with just a whisk. I talked softly at first and then with growing confidence. This is how we build flavor, I'd say, tasting my sauce. Do it for yourself, not for anyone else. My fingers were thinner now, deft. I cooked with a kind of angry joy, shoving my fury and grief into every swirl of garlic, every quartered tomato. The internet, so quick to mock before, now found me by accident. One video gained traction. Someone liked the way my hands danced when I cooked, the way I explained things without pretense. "It's almost like you cook for your mom," one comment read, and I blinked back, tears in the cold light of the kitchen. The followers trickled in, then flooded, then cascaded, my inbox filled with queries and praise. A producer from a streaming food show reached out, first as a whisper, then as a real offer. "We like your style," she wrote, "come in for a cooking test." I nearly deleted the email, suspecting a scam, but instead I wrote back with trembling fingers. I didn't tell my family, not at first. I wanted to keep the possibility in my pocket like a lucky coin. The show wasn't big, but it was real. They gave me 12 minutes to make something that sang New York in every bite. I made sesame seed simmet from my mother's faded recipe and topped it with honeyed ricotta and pomegranate. I cooked like my life depended on it, which in a way it did. People liked it. The numbers climbed. The long, lean producers grinned and asked me back. I got a regular internet slot. A little money started rolling in. I moved into a windowed apartment above a bodega, still small, but with sunlight that pooled on the hardwood like lemon cream. By the time my channel hit 100,000 subscribers, my family began hearing about it. The old neighborhood, always suspicious of any story that didn't start with "I got a good job with benefits," took time to come around. My uncle texted me once, "Saw your thing," then nothing. I visited home only once for Eid, and my aunt fussed at the stove while my cousin watched me sideways as if waiting for the punchline. They kept waiting. I didn't give them one. Years slipped by under the heat of kitchen lamps. I opened my own pop-up, a narrow slice of a restaurant in Manhattan, the last greasy spoon before the river. It was all tiled walls and chrome counters. The menu changed every month: black garlic ramen, anchovy toast, saffron rice pudding. Word got out. A food blogger came, then a couple of chefs whose names I'd grown up whispering like prayers. The line wrapped around the block. Recognition, when it finally arrived, felt less like vindication and more like a slow exhale. Newspapers called. The patrons trended younger, hipper. My mother, with effort, learned how to find me on Instagram. She liked every photo. One day the city's most clinical food critic, a frostbitten man with sharp glasses, wrote that my lamb stew stitched together everything aching and hungry about New York. I sat alone in the prep room, reading his words over and over, my hands shaking. I'd made something. Even the city, always skeptical, finally nodded. I kept receipts, not financial but emotional, news clippings, screenshots, the business license embossed with my crooked signature. Each one a layer, protection against all the years of smirks and doubt. Then came the call, a community event, fundraiser for the old neighborhood. They wanted a real local celebrity. I laughed out loud, the sound strange and lovely in my chest. I agreed, even though fear crept along my ribs every time I imagined the return. My cousins had poked fun when I worked at the deli. What would they say now? I pictured them folded into themselves, bracing for disappointment. The event was set for a Saturday in May. I arrived with crates of food in the trunk, the city washed clean by a morning thunderstorm. My sleeves were crisp, my chef's jacket gleaming. The old block looked smaller than I remembered. Children raced down the steps, shoeless mothers holding babies on each hip. My heart rolled in my chest. They'd set up folding tables along the church fence, white plastic flapping in the breeze. The strung bulbs gave off a jaundiced glow even in the daylight. My uncle, impossibly softer and still built like an old refrigerator, was directing traffic with a whistle. He looked at me with something between suspicion and awe. "Got enough for the crowd, superstar?" he said, covering his uncertainty with cheap bravado. "Enough to feed half of Queens," I replied, matching his smile. Inside the rec room, generations mingled with the smell of cumin and yeast. My mother hovered by the kitchen. She wore her good scarf, hands fretting over nothing, eyes shimmering when she thought I wasn't looking. Cousins darted around, faces more adult than before, laughing less loudly but still with sharp edges. I set up my station near the window. One cousin hovered, phone at the ready. "So what are you making, Gordon?" The old nickname. I let it roll off my shoulders. "Lamb manti," I said, digging into the battered cooler. "Hand-rolled like in the videos." A few snickered, but I kept working. My hands were steady, the ingredients slid from my fingers in a smooth dance. Egg, flour, salt. I rolled dough into gossamer-thin sheets, then pinched lamb filling into tiny boats. My mother drifted over, standing just behind my shoulder, silent but present. The room filled with steam. The scent of browned butter and smoked paprika crept across the tables. Slowly, the laughter died. Neighbors gathered around. Kids hopped on tiptoe to see the dumplings slip into boiling broth. One woman, the aunt who'd called me crazy for giving up a real job, approached with a paper plate. "Smells like Istanbul," she murmured, then took a bite. Something shifted then, a hush, electric, plates filled and emptied, voices turning incredulous. "You made this, he made this." Someone started filming, a full circle from the first viral humiliation, but now tinged with awe. My uncle, who'd called me chef delusion more than once, watched, eyes narrowed. I served him myself. He took one bite, chewed thoughtful, and then bent close. He whispered, low enough that only I could hear, "Didn't know you had it in you." I met his eyes. "I always did." He nodded, a brief flicker of pride in his face. He stepped back, letting the rest in. That's when the reporters showed up, modest local news, but real, microphones, lights. They asked questions about my journey, my recipes, my city, but the real scene, the one I hadn't dared wish for, came with the skeptics. The cousins who'd filmed that first video, the neighbors who'd rolled their eyes when I practiced knife work in the deli. Now they hovered at the edge of the crowd, uncertain. I called them over. "We're hungry," said the older cousin, fake tough. "Don't screw it up." I handed him a plate, steam wafting under his nose. He took a bite, paused. Something flickered in his expression. He tried to cover it up, to downplay the moment, but he couldn't. The taste, years in the making, hours of failure, the dogged echo of ridicule swallowed up in savory triumph, spoke for me. He nodded and for the first time in years said nothing clever at all. The rest followed. Skeptics became fans. Plates emptied. My mother caught my hand and pressed it hard, her smile quivering through tears. Back in the kitchen, away from the eyes, she whispered, "You did it. You showed them." For the first time, my anger softened. Serenity bloomed in its place, slow and fragile but real. The pain of those old jokes didn't vanish, but it became ballast rather than burden. When the event ended, dusk pried amber from the sky. I gathered my things as the last plates disappeared. My uncle came over, clapped my back. "Maybe next time you cook for the mayor," he said, half joking, half genuine. "Maybe next time you help me wash dishes," I shot back. The tension broke. He laughed, a real one, free of bite. I walked the streets alone that night, the city humming its familiar amber notes. The lights glinted on the wet pavement, the subway rumbled overhead. There was the laundromat where my mother once lost our rent money, the deli where Sal gave me my first shot, the stoop where my confidence had first bled out under 1,000 eyes. The bruises of old ridicule remained, but the victory was sweeter for it. A flavor built on struggle, anger simmered down to something richer, something lasting. For the first time, I truly belonged. Not to the city, not to the food, but to myself. And when I finally went home, drifting in on a cloud of lamb and bittersweet memory, I found the laughter had changed. Now it was warm, like bread, like home.